Ok, ok, preso. Perfect. Now the streaming is online, so everybody will be able to see you. And you can start, Riccardo, now.
But from where? Because the link on YouTube is not available still. Yes,
it is now. It is now.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so you can share your screen and start to present your work. You have about 12 minutes for your presentation, and then there will be some questions and answers.
Okay, whenever you allow me, I start.
Yes, please. Share the screen. Share your presentation because we can't see it.
Okay, sorry, I thought that you were already seeing it.
No. Okay.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, welcome. Hello everyone. My name is Ricardo Beck. I'm pleased here to share something that I'm really passionate about. That it's the black soldier fly insect farming, and my work is called. Professor, may you mute your phone, mic, please? The name of the work is optimizing the storage of black soldier fly seeding larvae. There was a project supervised by Professor Antonella D'Alesote and hosted by the Spanish company called Entomo Agroindustrial. I have a lot of background to share with you, but due to the time constraint, I will be very brief here. It's a challenge for us as human beings for the century to be able to redesign our economic mechanism. That means that we need to find ways to transit from the linear economy to the circular economy. And the best way for doing this is change our mindset and being able to improve efficiency in everything, but mostly in the use of natural resources. And that means that waste, there is no more room for waste in the system, and we need to be able to design waste out of it. And that's what fascinates me most about insect farming is how much they are able to transform waste into something that has economic value. And just talking a little bit briefly about waste, I just want to call attention, I hope you can see my pointer, that these are the way waste are be treating worldwide and divided by the incomes that the country have. But if we look into the composting and recycling, even in the high income countries, we are still far from living in a zero waste reality. And it's important us for bringing efforts to change the scenario, and there is a lot of work to be done here. Also, if we look about land and use land as a natural resource that contains a lot of natural resources itself, if we look to the way we are using land in the world, we see that from the land that we have available, half of it is being used to agriculture, and from the agriculture uses, almost 80% is for livestock, but not only grazing, but the feed production. And this feed production is mostly like the protein that is needed for feeding animals to make them grow. And if we find alternatives for the production of protein, we can really release pressure on the land use. It will directly affect many other natural resources and even the forest sector by allowing more land to be used in this regard. And this is a perfect timing for being talking about that, because the circular economy package of the European Union through the European Green Deal are releasing the farm to fork strategy. It's a document that it's trying to fostering the European to change the way the food is produced in Europe and the completely food system. And one of these things is stop being heavily demanding on importing assets from abroad. And one of the most important commodity, it's the soybean from Brazil, the place where I'm from. So there is a clear intention to change the way, and they recognize the insects are strategically in this way. So that's why insect is heavily mentioned in the document. And just like 3 weeks ago, a directive from the European Parliament allow insects to become part of the feed for poultry and pig. This is the black soldier fly in the adult stage. Black soldier fly is a saprophyte insect, which means that the habitat of this insect is on decay organic matter. And it's a very interesting insect because during the larval stage, it eats voracily. It's tremendous, the capacity that the larvae have to digest the organic matter. And they do this in such a way because when it becomes a fly, it's not going to eat anymore. So it needs to store the whole biomass need for the adult life during the larvae stage. And if we compare to the other flies, the larval stage of black soldier fly is relatively longer, which allow us to have more means to control the production. And what is fascinating, at least fascinates me, is that it transforms waste into, waste into something valuable. And the most interesting thing is the protein. The protein, as we can see here in the graph, it's very competitive in amount with all the other proteins we have around the world. And it's not only about protein, it's also about many different other byproducts that we can take from the black soldier fly. So just roughly look into this image, we can get from food waste to at least 4 byproducts that are interesting and contains economic value. The first is the compost, that actually for insects is better to call it frass. It's basically the jetta of the process, the things that they excreta. It's used for fertilizer. From the pupae, we can extract the chitin, that it's a substance that we find in the exoskeleton of the larvae, and it is being studied to replace plastic in 3D printing, for example. And then it comes from the most important and economic valuable byproducts, that it's the extraction of a protein that we can take from the larvae and separating this from the oil that can be used for biodiesel, for example. And here comes my project. Now, in this, I'd stay 9 months with Entomo Agroindustrial, learning how to produce the black soldier fly and understanding which gaps I can use for pursuing my dreams. That it's basically democratize the way we produce things, and mostly how to decentralize waste treatment. So what I can learn for now is that the black soldier fly and most of the insects, they require controlled environment conditions to get better yields of production, which means that you need to invest heavily in have a laboratory with all the parameters controlled, and it requires a good amount of investment. So in order to democratize and allow this to be done for small farmers and all around the world, I was trying to see if there is any gap in the cycle of the black soldier fly that can be done outside. And that's why I was studying this idea of creating a hybrid farming where part of the cycle of the larvae can be done outside in Mediterranean, for example, where the environment conditions are very interesting to allow this to happen. So the study is focusing on how can we store the seeding larvae that is getting out from the lab and moving to the outdoor facilities without damaging it in any sense in the capacity of digesting the organic matter or to gain weight. And so that's the main goal of the study. So first, I would like to explain what is the seeding larvae. Seeding larvae is a name that we gave to them, but it's very similar to the 5-doll name that Dortmund from IAVA gave to this study. And it's basically the moment where the larvae is stop having heavily metabolic process and start to concentrate the efforts only on building biomass. And it can achieve in 3-4 days. In our case, we are achieving around 6 to 7, and it had like around 5 milligrams. That's the moment where the larvae is more resistant for being exposed to non-ideal environment conditions. What we also knew from the previous studies is that temperature can delay the development of the larvae. So we are saying, okay, if we know the temperature can delay, so maybe if we store it in a lower temperature, it's just going to pause the evolution or the development of the larvae in that stage. And then when we move this to the final destination, it can go against to the point where we took it out from the lab. And that's what we were trying to do, reduce the temperature of storing to see if it's not only going to pulse, but also not affecting at all the conversion of biomass. So this is the methodology. We prepare 5 different temperatures. We store the larvae in a falcon tube, 100 larvae, CD larvae in a falcon tube, 3 samples for 3 days, 3 samples for days, 3 samples 5 days. And after the process, we move them to a bigger bucket where they have the cereal diet that they could eat and develop themselves in ideal temperature just for the research purpose. And in this bucket, they were allowed to have air inside. After 8 days, I was counting them one by one, waiting, dehydrated them to estimate the dry mass and have all the data needed for estimating the indicators that are here. One indicator is the survival ratio, so how much survive at the end. One is biomass conversion, how much for the dry mass of the diet at the beginning were converted into frass at the end. Individual growth rate, how many times in body they gain during the process, and the well-known feed conversion ratio, that it's how much mass of diet we need to give for them to gain units of weight. This is just a sample of how the data was collected. This list is way longer, and I cannot be here due to time constraints, but these are the results. The results show us that the temperature is actually a limiting factor, because at 10 degrees, we didn't had the good survival radius. We were expected to have at least 90% and higher. And it was achieved in 12 degrees during 3 days, but not longer than that. And all the other temperatures of the study, it was okay to keep them in this temperature for up to 5 days. Related to biomass conversion is an interesting thing to assess, because even though if we are talking about production of protein, that is not important, but if we are talking about the conversion of waste, this is an important thing, because not all the biomass that the larvae eat is used for body gain. They might use for metabolic process, or even to do the metamorphose towards a fly. So we had this information that the 10 was also not a good way of storing, but from 12 it was okay. And the individual growth ratio, at the end, we consider that this was not exactly a good data. That's why we disregard the information, but it's stated here. And the FCR, that is the most interesting thing, it gave us the same result that the survival ratio, which means that we were expecting to have something below 10, because it's a good mark that we can get even from the ideal conditions, and we could reach this in 12 degrees up to 3 days, and the other temperatures up to 5. This is an outside trial I did myself to try to see how much the larvae can be breed outside, even in low temperatures. Low temperatures, relative low temperatures. Of course, this is the early spring in Murcia. We had a temperature varying, as we can see in the graph, but reaching something close to 7 degrees, which from the studies we read, it's super low for breeding the larvae, but they survive. They survive in a ratio that it can appear to be low, that it's 51.7%. But this was kind of expected, because the temperature might have affected them. But the interesting aspect here is the average individual weight is 214. Oh, sorry, that it's a very good one, and the FCR6 is actually very, very promising for allowing these practices to be done. And actually, there was a very rudimentary system with no air conditioning and just heating up a little bit the diet before giving to them. It's important to point out here that the diet was on cereals, so these larvae can actually be used for commercial purpose. The conclusion of the studies shows that the fact that temperature is for sure a limiting factor. That's actually not so much a new information here, but it's important also to say that temperature is not the only limiting factor. We could see that if we slow down, if we put the temperature a little below, we decrease the metabolic activity, so they basically walk less around the container, and it allowed them to keep the moisture of their body there, because this is something that is really affecting their survival if they get dehydrated by walking and stay with fresh air passing through them. We see that the seeding larvae is resistant enough for fattening outdoors, and especially in Mediterranean countries, which is very favorable. We found out that temperatures that is actually easy to reach. Is not something that will require a lot of modifications in transportation systems. And as I say, we set some conditions for scaling up the storing by trying to find out the better way to play with temperature and the way to avoid dehydration. And finally, the news that at least I was pursuing is that hybrid farming is possible. So just for the record, I keep here the long list of references that I use for the document, and use this little time just to say thank you to everybody, especially for the technicians of Entomo Agroindustrial, Alejandro and Juan, that helped me very much in the development of this study. And everybody, all my Medfor colleagues, my family. I hope my mom is watching me. She doesn't understand Portuguese, so olá mãe, tudo bem? And I hope you guys enjoy the presentation. Thank you.
Many thanks, Ricardo, for your presentation, for your work. Now, see if there are questions from the commission. Sì, mi sa che devi venire qua, temo. So the Professor Battisti has some questions for you.
Hi, Ricardo.
Hello, nice to meet you.
We were in touch earlier by email. And yes, I have a first question, which is very general. We would expect you to be here for the defense. Why you didn't make it?
I mean, I didn't make it because I spent the whole year abroad during the work together with the company in Spain, and I actually just got the warning that I should be in Padova in a kind of last minute version, and I actually think that we still are in a pandemic, and this travel should be restricted to what is really important. And since we are doing this online, I guess we found a better solution that make me traveling there just for that, right?
Yeah, it is true, but it is a pity that you graduate from a university without having been there one day.
Yeah, that's definitely a pity.
A little bit sad for us, you understand, I guess.
Yeah, and no, don't take me wrong, it's sad for me too. It's just that we are in a different moment, so I don't think that it will be the best way for me to be done that, especially because I was warned by my supervisor that for the development of this project, I won't have the right material in the labs of the university. That's why she also
no
encouraged
doubt.
me to find a company for developing the work.
Yeah, but I fully agree with you about that. I discussed with Antonella Dalesotte a couple of times about your work. So no problem with that. It was just to have the occasion to see you in person. But anyway, that's something else. So coming to your work, I have a question about the potential, are you aware of the silkworm, what silkworm was for European economy 100 years ago, where people were farming silkworm and having the necessity to buy the eggs, in that case, not the larvae, from providers? They had more or less the same problem, because they were facing the problem to buy eggs and then to rear the caterpillars in the farms. Actually, it was kind of part-time job for farmers. And so I would think that your hybrid system goes quite similar to the old silkworm system, that it was very successful for the local economy, at least in Italy. So do you have or does the company you work with have a plan to exploit such a possibility of hybrid farming of the soldier fly?
The entomology industrial was not addressing their efforts on this direction. They were dealing with a different strategy for the market. So I can honestly say that from their side, there is no much interest for this moment of the company to do that. I know the directives really like the purpose of what I was doing that, and they could be interested for doing that in the future, but not for the current moment. I know that there is an Israeli company that actually are developing a sophisticated way to conserve the seeding larvae in order to exactly do what you said, no? The possibility of exporting the seeding larvae for the breeding in other parts. But as far as I could get from people that I know, even though they say that they found a better way for storing, that their market is not demanding that too much. But also because, as I said in my presentation, the authorization for using the insect for feeding animals, mostly the poultry and then the pig, were just done 3 weeks ago. So
Yeah,
there is a big potential. But answering your question, I have the interest. The entomology industrial was not exactly so interested for doing that at the right moment.
Okay, and do you have any idea about the type of substrate the farmers could use in order to have this local soldier fly farming? Do you have any idea about which type of food they can provide to the larvae?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I know the IPF is the organization that is dealing with the international organization for insect farming. They are trying to lead the discussions of changing a little bit the way we catalogate things as waste, because in any food system we cannot add waste in the food system, because this is not allowed in Europe. So what would be a big revolution is, for example, allowing the animal manure to be used as a feed for larvae, and the larvae being able to be processed as a feed in the future. So this will be something that can be very disruptive to any agro system, because especially the swine manure is a big problem. I know them personally, and if we find a better alternative to bring economic value to the way we treat the swine manure, that can be a change gamer, a changer in the game.
Yeah.
But now what can be used is subproducts of the harvesting of things that are not still considered waste and can be used. But in this regard, there is not much something that is really calling attention, but it can be done, as I said, with some cereals. But this is not making the insect farming something they can, at the least at the moment, compete with soybean in price.
Very good. Thank you. Yeah. And congratulations for your work that I liked very much.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you, Ricardo. There are no other questions for you.
Thank you, Professor.
If you remain in the group, we will first listen to Simon and then proclaim you.
Okay. Yeah, I will be here.
Thank you. And okay. Silence, mute your microphone.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, Professor.
Good luck, Simon. Thank you. Hi, Simon.
Good afternoon.
You can share your screen and start your presentation again with 12 minutes, maximum 15 minutes.
Yes, can you see the screen?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, okay, so thank you, Professor, for your introduction. Good afternoon, committee. Good afternoon, my colleague Ricardo, and good afternoon, anyone who might be watching the YouTube live stream right now. My name is Simon Herbeck, and it is my pleasure to introduce my master thesis to you today under the name Regulating and Marketing Options of Wild Forest Products in the Czech Republic, Stakeholders' Perspectives. Before moving to the main body of the presentation, let me briefly familiarize you with its outline. In the beginning, I will set the contextual background to better understand the relevance of the research. Through there, we will get into the thesis objectives and research questions, followed by the methodology justification and explanation. In the second half of the presentation, the main highlights of the survey results will be introduced, followed by the description of the proposed systems for wild forest marketing in Czechia. In the end, discussion will follow, concluded by the conclusion remarks. Wild forest products is one of the technical terms used for a wide scope of goods of biological origin other than wood, derived from wild and semi-wild forests, if I connect these two definitions. The most well-known terms are non-wood forest products or non-timber forest products, but in the literature we can also find terms as special forest products or minor products. They can serve us for various reasons, as food, as building materials, as fibers, or in chemical industry and more. Regarding its origin, they can be of vegetal, fungal, or animal origin. However, for the purpose of this thesis, the animal-derived products were not included. And that's for a simple reason, because in Czechia, hunting and in general game management are treated by different laws, and they have long separated tradition, and it would be too complex to include them into one research. And to better depict what kind of products we talk about, I can mention, for example, mushrooms, tree parts as flowers, leaves, bark, or resin, bushes and berries, or understory plants such as medicinal and aromatic herbs. Now it's time to introduce the Czech Republic. It is a small landlocked country in Central Europe with approximately 1/3 of its land covered by forests. The main timber species is spruce, or in Latin, Picea abies, which constitutes around 1/2 of Czech forests. But due to drought and bark beetles, especially the spruce forests are drying out, and it's resulting in the increased salvage logging and in decreasing timber price. And this results in need for diversification of forest management and diversification of income from forests. And how these two contexts are connected? As I mentioned, the timber price in Czechia is decreasing, while in contrary, the interest from researchers regarding wild forest products is still increasing, which can be demonstrated by the number of European projects, such as Incredible Star Tree or Cost Action FP1203. According to some researches, wild forest products in Europe have highest value in its central part, including Czechia. And regarding the non-commercial collection of these products in the country, they are well mapped thanks to the annual surveys that take place in the country since 1994. And as a result, wild forest products are, or at least should be, an integral part of multifunctional forest management to diversify the mentioned income from forests. Here we come in. One was to explore the perceptions of the main stakeholders on marketing and regulating options of wild forest products, and based on these perceptions, to suggest an adjusted system for wild forest products marketing, and that would be more justiciable and to promote the diversification of forest management. Now I will briefly mention about the research methodology. To achieve the main objective, to explore the stakeholders' perspectives, the participatory approach was used. Participatory approach is an umbrella term for different techniques, such as Word Cafe, Delphi, focus groups, and others. First of all, 5 stakeholder coalitions were identified, and different personalities from each stakeholder coalition were contacted and explained the aim of the research, and also asked them to provide some other personalities that they might consider important for this topic. This is so-called snowball method. All in all, 22 persons were contacted, from which 15 answered and 8 agreed to take part in the research. Furthermore, no one from the stakeholder coalition certification bodies took part. And so all in all, for the research, 8 persons from 4 stakeholder coalitions were considered. From the mentioned variety of participatory techniques, Delphi was chosen, and that's for several reasons. One, it is online technique, which is a great asset in the COVID time, and especially when I'm based in Spain and working with Czech stakeholders. Second of all, you can collect opinions from variety of stakeholders while their answers remain anonymous among them. So it's a support for honesty in answering, that they know that the other stakeholders won't judge them for their opinion. And last but not least, rapid consensus on certain topics might be achieved. To explain what Delphi technique is, it is a structured survey of several rounds with most general questions asked in the first round. And with further rounds, we are going more deep into the topic. After each round, a report is reported that is concluding the group opinions based on the answers. And based on these reports, the questions for the next round of the survey is created and sent to the respondents together with the report. Usually there are 2 or 3 rounds of Delphi surveys. In our case, we used 3 rounds. After the second round, the system for wild forest products marketing was compiled, and the last round, the third round, was used as a feedback on this system. Now I will briefly introduce some of the main results. In the thesis, the whole report on each question can be found, but for the purpose of the thesis, the answers for the main questions were compiled into 4 categories, 4 answer categories, and that's yes, no, maybe, or no response. As we can see, most of the stakeholders agreed that there will be adjustments needed in the Forest Act in regards to support the economic activity of wild forest products, while also avoiding the overexploitations of the ecosystems. Only the stakeholder coalition, government, and governmental organizations was split into all 4 answer categories. Building on this, in the second round, the idea of separating commercial and non-commercial wild forest product collection in the Forest Act was suggested, which was already somewhat controversial, with the respondents providing good points to support this idea and to disagree with the idea. All in all, there were 4 respondents for and 3 respondents against. Furthermore, you can see that there is a discrepancy between the coalition of government and governmental organizations and the other coalitions in the question if wild forest products have a potential to contribute considerably to the rural development in Czechia. This can be probably due to the perception of value of wild forest products beyond its material value, such as tourism and territorial marketing. Also, the question regarding inclusion of wild forest products into a scheme of payments for ecosystem services was perceived somewhat controversial, again with 3 answers for and 4 answers against. And now we come to the final system for wild forest products marketing. Here you can see the diagram that's one of the main outcomes from the research. As you can see on the bottom, there are 3 types of wild forest products collectors. 2 of them, the non-commercial collectors and collection for direct sale, already exist in Czechia, but that we called contractual collectors. This is an ordinary society that creates contracts with supply points to where they can further bring collected wild forest products and sell them. Supply points should be small or medium-sized enterprises that further process or resell these products to the end consumer. When the contractual collector brings a product to the supply point, they are some main information is input into the central database that collects information regarding the place and date of collection, the date of sale, type of wild forest products, and some others. To this central database, some regulating bodies would have an access to better monitor the potential overexploitation and to set some regulating tools to prevent this overexploitation. From this system, some issues appeared, and that's, for example, the main one is the traceability issue. Traceability is a possibility to track the origin of the product along its whole supply chain, from the primary producer up to the final consumer. As I mentioned in the system, when the contractual collector brings the wild forest product to the supply point, they should input the data regarding the place of the origin and the date of the collection to the central database. But the question how this information would be verifiable, that remains unresolved in the system. And it's one of the limitations that I will mention later. Now we can take a look on some added value possibilities, value-added possibilities to the system. This can be product labeling, certifications, or territorial branding. There are some features of wild forest products that can add the value to the final product before selling to the final consumer. These characteristics are, for example, the wild origin, organic origin, or originating from sustainably managed forests. There are different certification schemes already existing, as you can see the main logos in this slide. And so it can be used to add the value. Furthermore, the territorial marketing is a tool to connect the special product with the specified locality of its origin, and it brings tourism attention to this locality and creates more rural development beyond wild forest products, also for tourism. As I mentioned, there are some limitations to the study, and here I will mention some of them. As I mentioned, only 8 stakeholders took part in this research, and it's not a really high number, and it's one of the main limitations. Also, the missing stakeholder coalitions, especially the certification bodies as FSC or PFC, is one of the limitations. Last but not least, as already mentioned, the traceability remains unresolved, but it provides the opportunity to further research, which I will mention the possibilities for further research now. The second and third point, they are connected, because if we want to monitor and regulate the contractual collection to prevent overexploitation, we have to know how much we can collect from the ecosystem before overexploiting it. And that's why the data should be collected on wild forest production, and based on that to create production models to predict the future, delineation. Such production models already exist in some countries, so it's even though it's not an easy task, it's possible. And last but not least, the mentioned system is a theoretical concept which would need further economic feasibility study to discover it can be applied in practice, if it's economically feasible. To conclude, this research, due to its limitation, it should mainly serve as a basis for further discussion on this topic in the country, and to further bring more investigation on the topic. Its aim is to provide more diversification of income from forest for forest owners and managers, as well to develop more opportunities for rural development in the country. And since nowadays the wild forest products collection remains an market externality, positive one for the society and negative one for forest owners and managers. It should serve also to more efficiently and justicably manage the natural resources. And as already mentioned on the previous slide, there is a further research needed on this topic. And this is with what I would conclude, and thank you for the attention.
Thank you, Simon. And now I ask my colleagues if they have questions for you. Mauro, please come here.
Hello, Simon. Thank you very much for your presentation. I have a couple of questions. The first one, well, you mentioned already among the limitations that you were not able to cover maybe all the alliances, all the group stakeholders you probably might have in mind. And indeed, I was surprised not to see there environmental NGOs, especially when considering specific questions on the sustainability of the wild forest product collection in the first round in particular. Was this just a matter of reaching them that you didn't succeed, or are there other reasons for not having them into the group?
Yeah, it was mainly to not reaching them. They were like some of them were included in different stakeholder groups, or like the personalities who work in such NGOs were included in the different stakeholder groups because they work in both. But yeah, unfortunately, most of the stakeholders were not reached.
Okay, thank you. And then the second point, have you been considering or making some considerations about possible side policies or tools to support the enforcement of this kind of proposal that you've been developing? Let me give you one example. For instance, any specific fiscal regime, as it was in the case of Italy, which is supporting the implementation and the adoption of these measures. Any thought or any consideration about that?
Yeah, the system in Czechia and Italy is very different because the Czech one is more similar to the Finnish one in this sense. So it's not very much comparable, and the fiscal regimes I didn't really much consider it because the aim was to create this theoretical concept, and for some further research would be needed into these kind of regimes and in this kind of tools.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you for the questions.
Any other question?
I have a question. Hi, Simon. I'm Andrea Battisti. Are you aware of the impact of this wild forest products collection in Czechia? I mean, what is the percentage of mushrooms and berries that are picked by people usually? Is there any estimation about that?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Right now, the collection is not regulated anyhow, and in the Forest Act, it's stated that anyone is entitled to enter the forests, irrespective to the ownership, and to collect forest fruits and the dried brush fruit from the ground. So, like statistically, like there are not any concrete statistics regarding this. But as I mentioned, since 1994, there are annual surveys without a stop. So this non-commercial kind of collection is well mapped in Czechia, and the results say that there is still a good space for further development of these market solutions for collection. I don't know the concrete numbers at the moment. I don't have it in my head, but I read in the articles that there is a space for further collection, even though it would need to be regulated to not overexploit the ecosystems.
And did you observe any relationship with the salvage logging for the bulk beetles? Is there any change in the way these products are growing?
Yeah, there actually is a research from the last year regarding bilberries that was creating a model investigating the features that have an effect on the collection of bilberries in a respective year. And one of them was with higher salvage cutting, there is a less collection of bilberries in Czechia.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for the questions.
Thank you, Simon. I think we can now close this. So I will leave this session open, but we need to discuss a little bit amongst us your assessment. So please stay here, and we will be back in a very short while.
Congratulations, Ricardo, for finishing it.
Yeah, congratulations, you too. I hope it was a nice work to be done. You're muted.
Sorry. Now now let's see how it will be assessed.
Please mute your microphone for a short while.
Sorry.
All right.
Okay, we are back. Vabbè, se volete venire vi vedo. Sì. Can you hear us? Right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so we start with Ricardo Beck. Mr. Ricardo Beck, having considered your study curriculum and having assessed your thesis, the graduation committee is awarding your final examination with 98 points over 110. So by the authority bestowed on me by the rector of the University of Padova, I proclaim you Master of Science in Forest Science.
Thank you. Thank you.
You will receive the documents by the university, and congratulations, of course, for your career.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor.
Congratulations, Ricardo.
Thank you, Simon.
Mr. Simon Beck, having considered your study curriculum and having assessed your thesis, the graduation committee is awarding your final examination with 105 over 110. So by the authority bestowed on me by the rector of the University of Padova, I proclaim you Master of Science in Forest Science. Again, congratulations to you too. Thank you
very much.
for your attendance, for being here, for being our students, and best wishes for your future career. We hope that you remain attached to us, in contact, become a part of our alumni association, so we can in a certain way remain connected. So I can close this session now, and you can go enjoy your graduation. And
Yeah.
Very much thank you. And
congratulations.
have a
Bye-bye.
nice afternoon.
Bye-bye.
Io proprio no, devi cantare.